Alright guys, part 5 on our Hilux. You can see it's all back together now. I just want to be really clear. So plan A was we were going to use an old drive shaft, swap the boot over and try and get a bit more out of the drive shaft and be a bit tight, okay? Which I always said to myself, stop doing this, just put a new shaft in it. Anyway, because it was butchered, then I went, okay, I'm putting a new shaft in it. Then Toyota said, we've got one in Australia. I said, no worries, send it. Next day they said, I got bad news. I said, and then I was still telling you guys in the video because my mindset was still, well, we'll swap over the boot, we'll go back to plan A. But before we did that, we had a discussion, myself and my #1 assistant, 4x4 diesel legend, and we said, yeah, what are we wasting our time swapping these boots and then we're going to put the new shaft in? Nah, so we said, we'll just chuck it back together how it is. It'll be fine for probably a year, but look, it'll be fine for 3 weeks. Fingers crossed, right? Fingers crossed, hopefully. And we'll put the new shaft in 3 weeks. So that's still to come. Now, up here, obviously on the injector side, we've got everything back together, all the intercooler on, but we're doing the BFE job and we're just going to give you a bit of information with that. So on a lot of vehicles, including this Hilux, it had the one-piece water pump. So what we do first, we strip it all down. You've probably seen this in other videos, so it's going to get pretty boring unless I can find something in particular to show you, which I haven't planned. See, you got it all stripped down. The whole backing plate has to come off to get the back part of the water pump. I've explained before, see the backing plate of the timing cover goes across, covers this area here, right? It bolts into these holes here, this hole here, whatever, right? So there's 3 bolts. A bit of RTV down here, and if you, I probably might not have told you this before, what I like to do, you can spend your time cleaning it up, there's no point because that's already taken perfect shape to how you want the cover to be. A lot of people just put the cover back with no RTV. You can do that because these aren't 100% watertight anyway, but what I do is I make sure it's all clean like that, and I just put a tiny little bit of RTV over this RTV. That's a good amount of RTV. If you start dry, you put a good amount on, so you can see a fair bit there. Rather than clean it all off and put a fair bit back, I'm just going to put a really light smear. I'm talking a millimetre, just enough to wet it up, and it'll basically stick this one to the other one. It'll seal it better without any excess or mess, if you know what I mean. So that's what we do there. Once you've done that, you've got the 2-piece pump. See, you undo these bolts. You can see the gasket in between, so if the water pump ever leaks, that can come off without, you don't need to pull all this backing plate off and all this gear. See the aircon compressor? Off. Alternator gone, it's all off because it has to come off. Again, see these brackets here of the water pump, the backing, all that tension has to come off to get to this water pump. It's a dumb setup, the 1-piece pump. I don't know why, it's generally, it's a Thailand thing, you know, I don't know why they do it. Everything up here looks good. You can see the normal amount of RTV there, probably way too much, but too much is probably better than not enough. And you can see the small amount we've got in there that we put for the, as I said, the 4 dobs prescribed. 1, 2, 3, 4. So good information that you can't see as I'm putting the valve cover on, but you can see the results of the job, if you know what I mean, afterwards. Okay, so we're currently, there was a bit of noise in the background. That's the bearings for the pulleys getting pressed out. We've got to put new bearings. Let's have a look in the intake here, see if it's had much dust going through there. You can see a very light amount maybe, but not much. I'll just do the finger thing and just, yeah, nah, there's nothing going on. It's just the colour of it, you know what I mean? There's no dust there, you just get a bit of a, see, where I touched it, there's no real colour change, just, you know, super fine stuff. Nothing that's going to hurt the engine. Cam seal, I say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Some people are going to say, oh, you've gone all the way in there, you know, and you didn't change it. But they don't leak, right? Generally they don't leak, and sometimes when people change them, they end up leaking because they don't do a good job. And I've got this motto, if it's another brand, if it was a Holden or a Ford, I'm hearing you. You're all the way in there, you're doing a transmission problem or a clutch, do the rear main. But on these vehicles, whether it's the rear main, the cam seal, or the crank seal down the bottom there, whatever you want, they don't leak oil. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Check it out really thoroughly, because you will have to go in this deep again to fix that oil leak. When they do, they're more of a weep. They hardly ever leak. Leaks, it's really getting messy down here. You've got to be careful it's not people overflowing the oil, pouring in too fast and it runs down here and makes a lot of mess. So you've got to make sure you start off clean in this area to know if that seal's actually got a leak. And usually it'll be more of a sweat. You'll get a bit of dampness. It's a bit untidy, but it's not actually a leak. But of course, you don't want that sort of contamination down around your timing belt that's got to last 150,000 Ks. What else? Bit of feedback. We know the timing belt was done at some stage. We don't know when because it's not filled out in the books and we don't have invoices, that sort of thing. But due to the age, they probably did it. It was an aftermarket. It was a, what was it, mate? It was a dayco timing belt, yeah? Dayco timing belt, and I think it was, you would have seen in the earlier videos. If you haven't seen part 1, 2, 3, and 4, check those out first because this is part 5. You may find it in the playlist, something like our Hilux or something like that it might be called, in our playlists on 4x4 diesel. I think it was a, you would have seen it in one of the videos. I think it was a Gates, if not Dayco. I'm pretty sure it was a Gates. I don't like either of these brands really. They're reputable brands in the automotive industry, but when I see the condition of those belts compared to the genuine, I just love the jet. I've got to say, I love the, and it really doesn't cost any more. Look, I'll say too much more or any more to use genuine parts, okay? Simple as that. Actually, they were both Dayco, so it doesn't matter anyway, but they were both Dayco, right? A bit like the supercharge. I don't like supercharged batteries. Good news is it's pretty clean because the alternator is also pretty clean. When I say it's pretty clean, I mean, when you look at the alloy colour there compared to the rest of the car, it's looking pretty clean. So I've gone straight away beauty. That's been replaced because that's another thing I was expecting to happen soon. Right, you can see whatever that's been replaced with. It's probably going to be sweet. Feels good. Everything feels good, doing what it's meant to do. Point is, the alternator's nice and clean, so the good news is they probably got a flat battery. They probably put a battery in it first because this is what people gas Gnostics do. They put a battery in it and then they get it, the battery goes flat again, and then they put another, well, they charge it up and they put an alternator in it. Just looking at that sort of rip open a little bit, but you get that. Wouldn't worry about that too much. We've got spares anyway, so if we're going to travel more than 100, 200, 300 k's from home, we're going to carry a spare. Oh, I just edited a massive double, triple sneeze out. It's really windy, you know, dust, hay fever and all that. Really messes with me. But, nice fresh alternator, fresh battery, bonus. A new idler, a new tensioner. We've got some new bearings in these that have just been pressed in to all these original OEM pulleys. When you take your camshaft timing gear off, don't lose the little keyway. Alright, so we're slowly getting it back together, and what comes to mind is people ask questions. What do they ask? They say, oh, what's the torque setting for this and that? Well, in the VIP group with those full detail videos, all that sort of stuff's in there, one way or another. You just need to watch and search and listen. But I'm going to quickly run through a few. Now, I could be wrong here, so don't rely on me. Check your manuals. You know, I'm getting old and older and old and getting old and older, so I could make mistakes. This one's 98 Newton meters. How you do that with the engine back together, how you hold it, is by, because the one on the crankshaft, that's about, what is it, 300 or 3, oh, it's just one of those numbers I can't quite grasp. Something like F-tight, okay? F-tight, have you heard of that before? Anyway, AKA FN tight. Now, I think it's something like 320, 340, it's some number up there, but it might be 325. I literally can't really think of what it is, but it's really high, that one down there we're talking about. And because that's tight, you can use that to do this. You hold, you know, with your big bar down there, and then your torque wrench can be here, 98, right? This one here, 35, your 10mm hex, and the two little 10mm, about 13, I think. Well, that'll work anyway. I can pretty well just do them by hand, happy days. I'm happy with that system, but just trying to give you some information to give you a guide. I'm pretty confident that's what those torque values are meant to be. You can see we've got the water pump on, we've got the new timing belt on, we've got the idler, the tensioner, and it's all nice and clean. And we've double checked all our timing marks and we've turned it. So once you get it all together, we turn it at the crankshaft, turning, and make sure if it turns, then you're all good. Don't worry about trying to reline up your marks unless you really want to. And you can just check all your marks. So there's a bit of moisture still. We blew it dry, but you know, it's not really a hot day. It's going to take a little bit more air drying and a little bit more compressed air. Just wanted to show you where it's at. We're getting it back together. Have a look at this like magic. He's in there, he's just turning the keys on and off to get ready to put the compensation codes in for the injectors. Coolant's in. It's taken about, what did it take, 8 litres, yeah? Correct. About 8 litres before we get it started. So hopefully it starts, eh? Because when you think about it, we've just about stripped this engine bare. When you consider everything from the top and down, that side's been off. Everything on the front's been off, and down here, the only thing that hasn't been off the engine's the bloody exhaust manifold. Pretty well, so it's a big job. And you'd think there's a lot of things that can be forgotten. There is a lot of things that can be forgotten. There's a lot of pitfalls, things that can be forgotten or done wrong, which is why it's really important to watch all the videos in the VIP before you start going ahead to do these sorts of works. So these sorts of videos, they're not showing you. There's hours of works. This is, okay, I'll give you an idea. We know what we're doing, and this is 2 full days work we spent on this vehicle so far. 2 full days. So, and probably long days too. And I'm not saying everything's fixed yet. We're going to go over all the electrical and get rid of some of this stuff. That's a separate job. Basically what we've done is some service work, some checks, some prevention. Checking that oil pickup was urgent. Those injectors, they didn't sound too good to me, right? You can see the timing belt's done. 8-year-old injectors, you know, who knows, right? We've got to go over it and fix up some electrical work. We've done the BFE, we've done the injectors, the manifold's clean, air filter's okay for now. Hey, did you clean the MAF sensor?
Yes.
Oh, very good, see? Always the correct answers, love it. So, MAF sensor's clean, MAP filter's replaced. You can even see we've got some nice new shiny bolts in there, because I have new ones in stock for when some vehicles are missing those bolts. So what, I paid for them, I put the new ones in my car, and the used ones will go into the missing ones on customers' cars. There you go. Because they've got to match. You can't have shiny new ones mixed in there. And see, if you see a bit of shiny going on there, what we do, we add a little bit of moly coat on that rubber there, just to help it all seal up a bit. They are, like I said earlier, they don't seal up perfectly, but it does help it seal up. Now, while we're having a look around, all the plugs and everything, check all your plugs. One that always gets forgotten, see that one in behind there? That's one worth watching this video for, to get told about that. This brown one, sometimes people forget down there on the common rail. Sometimes people forget that one. Dipstick, just make sure it's all the way in. Yeah, because that's a bit bent, you know, that's meant to be locking that in, but someone's bent it back a bit too far. But it's enough to, oh, so it's barely enough to stop it from coming out, isn't it? So what I might do, I'm going to get off the camera, I'm going to pull the dipstick out, and I'm going to bend this in a little bit more the way it should be, so that it stays sitting over there. That's the idea, fix a few things up. See, can you see down there? See that little tab there? You know, it's got to, that was sitting off. It's got to retain the dipstick. You don't want this vibrating out, coming loose, getting mud, dirt, water, or whatever down in there. That's the downside perhaps to having a dipstick. And that's why in videos I say, you know, at the end of the day, trying to zoom it out, there we go. At the end of the day, you know, you might have a snorkel, but if you're that deep in water or coolant or whatever the case may be, you've got bigger problems, right? You've got bigger, are you hearing what I'm saying? Bigger problems. What's going on down there? I'm just, what's going on? A bit of water sitting there, that's all. I saw the water sitting down on the, you might have been seeing the same thing, so maybe I better explain it. So when we wash it, we'll try and blast the oil drain hole out of that, because obviously over the years people have let the oil spill out into that area. We don't do that because we do it when it's hot and all that, and generally oil doesn't end up down in around the oil filter there. But you hit it hard with a pressure washer, and usually you'll blow the hole out, or run some degreaser through it first. Anyway, the point is, if you got water above something like a dipstick tube, that doesn't really seal that well. You're going to get water in your transmission. So when I say, you know, about water crossings and depths, and, you know, I'm not saying, you know, snorkel may be a slight advantage in water crossings, you know, maybe, you know, but it doesn't make you invincible. You can go through, we've been through really deep water without snorkels, and any deeper, and I'm just nervous even with a snorkel, because there's other components that you need to protect, like dipsticks, just being one example that's in front of us. Anyway, this is all back together. We leave the plastic cover off the intercooler until we start the vehicle, because we want to be able to, when it's running, get in there and have a look and go, yeah, you know, it all looks good in there, no oil leaks, whatever, just in case for the first time ever that valve cover gasket got twisted up, or you had a damaged one that had a cut in it we didn't know about, and it starts leaking. That's why we go for a really good drive, give all this a good clean up. See, it's all nice and clean down there compared to new belts and all. A few dirty fingerprints, don't worry about that. But see the belt, the bearings, the water pump, everything's beautiful now, right? So we're going to get it started soon and give it a clean up, give it a bit of good 20k road test, go past Dan Murphy's, get blind. No, just go go past Bunnings. We need some workshop supplies, and we'll maybe let you know how it went either in this video or the next one. Subscribe, turn the bell on, just letting you know what we're doing on our Hilux, so it gives you a bit of a guide to, if you buy a used vehicle, some of the most urgent or most important works. And I say do as I say, not as I do, but in this case you can do as I do, because what else am I going to do? Thanks for watching, guys.